is Critical Talk with Professor Aminah Al-Deen, and I have the honor of having with me this evening Dawood Waleed. Surprise, surprise. Dawood has studied across the way in the disciplines of Arabic grammar and morphology, foundations of Islamic jurisprudence, and sciences of the exegesis of the Quran. And he has previously served as the Imam at Masjid Wali Muhammad in Detroit and the Boston American Islamic Center in Hampshire. I can't pronounce that. Hamtramck. I know where it is, Michigan, and I'll go back to that. Is the author of the book Towards Sacred Activism, co-author of the book Centering Black Narratives, Black Muslim Nobles Among the Early Pious Muslims, and Centering Black Narrative. Al-Bayah, Blackness and Africa, and author of essays in the 2012 book All American 45 American Men on Being Muslim, as well as the 2014 book Quran in Conversation. And I'm going to ask him when we take a break if he could grab those books because I want to put them up. But right now, I'm going to introduce you to Imam. He hates the titles, but I'm going to give them to him anyway. Dawood Waleed. And I had, there's so much always to talk with you about because you do so many wonderful things. But I kind of want to take you between the two worlds in which you function. And I'm calling Care a world, and I'm calling Lamppost a world. And the two meet, and then they diverge, and then they meet, and then they diverge. And what better person to have here explaining all of that? One of the things is I read the CARE national alerts daily, and Islamophobia has gone down a rung or two, although its instances creep up rungs and rungs and rungs. So at first, I want you to tell me, how are you all handling that? Has the narrative changed? Because when you say, I condemn, I condemn, I condemn, pretty soon nobody's listening. So have you changed? But some of the stuff that's happening is horrible. Talk to me.
Well, first of all, assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for having me on. And it's my pleasure and my honor to be on your show, and you as a prolific academic and an author. And I clearly remember that really groundbreaking forum that you helped organize years ago, where you brought together academics, religious scholars, and community activists, where we had that 2-day discussion in Chicago.
We need to do that again.
We really need to do it again. Well, maybe we have to do it over StreamYard or over Zoom. But in this particular climate, things have changed, and they have changed in the last 4 years, for the better in some ways and for the worse in some, right? So I like to start off with some of the positives. One of those things is that the Muslim community in general is not treated as a third rail, politically speaking, from many in the Democratic Party, or people who label themselves as progressives. And we are no longer the whipping board in corporate media or mainstream media as we were prior to the election of Donald J. Trump. That form of anti-Muslim bigotry or Islamophobia has actually gone down and decreased from my vantage point. And let's go back to 2008 even. I remember when President Barack Hussein Obama was running for president, and he was being labeled as a undercover Muslim or a Muslim in hiding, right? dealing with Muslims was like basically dealing with, like, we were like a radioactive community. Even the president himself at the time when he was a senator, his answers to, well, his father is a Kenyan Muslim, and he grew up in Indonesia, he's a secret Muslim. His answer overwhelmingly was, well, I'm not a Muslim, I'm a Christian. Instead of being like, well, even if I was a Muslim, so what?
What? Yeah.
Right. So, but now we fast forward to where we're at right now, and those types of indictments of Muslims getting involved in politics and seeking to undo the American way of life and creeping Sharia. Even with Ilhan Omar, as much as she gets attacked these days, or Rashida Tlaib that's in my backyard here in Detroit, even they aren't subjected to many of the things that were said just going back in 2008. So these are kind of like, and people in the Democratic Party like Nancy Pelosi will even get up and even support and endorse Congresswoman Tlaib. So there's been some more political space for Muslims in this regard. However, I would say that some things have gotten worse. And one of those things gotten worse is that we have someone in the White House who is, let's just say what it is, he's a white nationalist. When he first came into the White House, and his executive order was to have the Muslim travel ban on those Muslim countries, which is going into 3 different iterations. He called African countries S-hole countries, which of course we know the majority practice religion on the African continent, not just North Africa, but sub-Saharan Africa, is the religion of Islam, is Muslims. And I've spent time with the scholars in Mali as well as in Senegal. So some of this outward xenophobia and outward bigotry that's even made its way into executive orders and public policy has actually exasperated and gotten worse than from previous years. So we have the compounding of bad policies that started with the Patriot Act and the undoing of the FISA court through the NSA, and then other sorts of policies like such as CVE that started under the Obama administration. Now we have compounded on top of that.
Wait a minute. Can you go back and explain what CVE is? I mean, I know, but I don't know that everybody in the audience does.
Okay, thank you. It's the countering violent extremism program that was patterned off of a program called Prevent in the UK that basically treated the Muslim community as a suspect community that would need some sort of special intervention to counter radicalism or counter violent extremism, which then basically put Muslims even more so under the microscope of being national security threats. And of course, we know this was a failed analysis, given historically in the United States of America, the highest percentage of people who have committed violent extremism and mass shootings happen to be white males who profess the religion of Christianity. And historically, the most prolific group of terrorists in the United States of America has been the Ku Klux Klan, right? So that's the flaw of CVE. But now we have some of these other policies and some of this rhetoric that has come from Mr. Trump. So in some ways, on the individual level of hate crimes and individual acts of workplace bigotry, these things have actually gotten worse in the last 4 years. These sorts of things have gotten worse.
Well, I think the reason I wanted to start with CARE was, in the African American community and maybe in the Black community in general, there's been a kind of, they're talking about them, not me. And, that these acts are happening to them, and they're not banning me. They're banning them. And it's not that I don't have to pay attention, but I don't have to be really, really worried. And I don't want the things that are important about those that seek to erase the presence of Islam, because I do read the Middle East Forum unfortunately for me. And um, in there, it's a tirade. It is a tirade every day against, well, the brotherhood is here and Kara is a front for the brotherhood. And I'm saying, do you even really know who the brotherhood is? And which brotherhood are you talking? You know, I mean, it's an ongoing just rant. And at one point, I did write its editor uh, back and say, what is your problem? You know, don't you have anything else to talk about? Of course, he didn't answer me, but he does know me because he tried to get me fired a couple of times. But,
Hmm.
you know, they have not let up, which means we cannot let up. So I was looking over what has changed about the language, because language, as you and I both know, is extremely important. You can't you can just say I condemn, I condemn, I condemn, but what else?
Well, I think that if anyone would look at CARE's press releases from the national level, I never got into it here in Michigan much of the condemnation game because it's it's kind of not, first of all, not only are we not responsible for certain acts of violence that go overseas, in which Muslims are the majority of the victims of that violence, right? But also it plays into this bad frame where we actually de facto are connecting ourselves or taking some sort of responsibility or onus as if we have control of what goes on over
Right.
there, which we can't even fast a month of Ramadan on the same day, much less control what someone does over in Lebanon, right? We don't have any control over that, right? But 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 the what you'll see from Care National is that there has been basically little to no condemnation of things that have gone on overseas or abroad, and simply because um, again, we don't feel the need or we have to take ownership for what people are doing overseas. That has nothing to do with our daily lives here, of what we have control over as American Muslims. So yeah, we can pray for peace, and some of us do have family members in certain countries such as Somalia, where there's been issues about violent extremism and the terrorist group Shabab that's there. But it is to say that we don't necessarily feel the need that we just have to condemn, 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 condemn. If anything, we as citizens of the United States of America, and you'll see that CARES in this a lot more, we condemn the state-sponsored violence that takes place against citizens and legal residents in this country,
Right.
meaning that the violence that ICE has committed, the violence that the FBI has committed, such as when Imam Command was a victim of homicide by the FBI, the violence that's taken place against people such as George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, who's the police, no arrests have been made in that case yet, or
Isn't
the
that
or
something?
the huh?
I said no arrest yet.
No arrest yet. No arrest yet. Or the type of violence and public policy that would lead to America having the most people incarcerated, imprisoned in any other country in the world, including Supermax and 23-hour lockdown, which Amnesty International and other international bodies, including the UN, has said that the United States prison system is committing human rights violations, right, against its own citizens. So that's the type of violence that that's the types of things that we're more in the business of condemning these days than something that's going on over halfway across the world that we have no control over.
Well, I think that is laudable, and I'm hoping that people are following both the local chapters and looking at the language, because there's been a switch. And I don't know if you weren't following, you know, that you noticed a switch in how things are handled and what is talked about. I'm going to take a little hiatus from things political because I want to dig down in your books. Which one
Okay.
you want? Do you happen to have them near you?
Hold on one second. I can pull
Okay,
them.
wait a minute. Hold it. Let us
Before I
take
go to the break.
a 1 minute break.
Great.
We're back, and I am determined that my guests who are writing in the midst of all of the other things that they do get a plug here on Muslim Network TV. So, which book do you want to start with first?
Well, we'll start off first with the book that I co-authored with Ahmed Mubarak.
Can you
Also,
show us the cover?
yes, it's right here. It's called Centering Black Narrative, Black Muslim Nobles Among the Early Pious Muslims.
Where can we
And
get that book? Can we get it on Amazon?
yes, ma'am. You can get it on Amazon.com or also Mecca Books. And what that book is about is we tried to historically highlight some of the righteous Muslims who would phenotypically be seen as black that came from the first two generations of Muslims. And in this book, we did not write about Bilal because with many, I mean, obviously many Muslims are familiar with Bilal, but we also felt that Bilal is tokenized sometimes. So, like when we talk about issues of race or blackness being not respected or even erased within the narrative of the Muslim community, we both had a shared experience where they say, "Well, what about Bilal?" or "I love Bilal," or things such
Uh,
as that, right? So, we didn't write about Bilal in the first volume of centering black narrative, black Muslim nobles among the early pious Muslims, but that was the impetus behind writing that. And then we wrote a volume 2 called Centering Black Narrative, Ahlul Bayt, Blackness in Africa, which talks about some of the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, including those who had African mothers, because a number of them had African mothers and also were described in books as being phenotypically black or would be seen as black Arabs, given that Arab is not a race. It is normally linked to one's paternal lineage as well as a cultural tie and normally some sort of connection to the Arabic language. So just as uh, there are Arabs with blue eyes and or green eyes with light colored skin in Syria. There are black Arabs in Sudan and Mauritania, right? So we wanted to wrote about that. Then the
so
third book
we're
that came
having
out about
fun. No, I'm saying you all just been having fun. Go ahead.
yeah. And in this book, which Imam Zaid Shakir wrote the foreword for, and instead Lena Safi wrote a quick introduction, is called Towards Sacred Activism. And this book is kind of like a guidebook for a class that I developed as like a type of primer about how some ideas I had about spiritually based activism, about how to weave in Islamic spirituality and some of our theology in terms of social justice activism. So those are the three that I've written, and I have another one that's coming out later on this year. It's with the publisher in the UK right now, and it will be entitled Blackness and Islam. And this particular book will be dealing with some of the weak or fabricated hadiths that some Orientalists use to critique Islam, or to say that Islam is anti-Black. And also will critique some of the statements that were made by some scholars of the medieval time period that were really I can't even use the word not nice, racist, right? So it's Islam and the Quran racism free, of course, but of course that Muslim scholars and Muslim civilizations have not always been racism free. As a matter of fact, that's far from the case in certain time periods in Islamic civilization, where there was a lot of ethnic chauvinism in certain periods of our history. So that's what the upcoming book will be about. It should be out by late October, early November, God willing.
Oh, so you're getting a lot of sleep, huh? Just writing and writing and writing.
Well, alhamdulillah, I had already started writing this book, and I had a time period or time frame that I was going to try to have it submitted for the first round of edits by December. But this was I guess, the hidden blessing of being on lockdown during COVID-19. That I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to travel. I would normally travel about twice a month out of state, somewhere on the weekend. So that time that I would normally have for traveling or going to different places, I just hunkered down and just did more writing, since I couldn't go anywhere.
Oh, I'm loving it. So all of these book, the ones, not the one you're working on now, are available to our audience on Amazon or Mecca?
Yes, they're on Amazon.com. Yes, or you can go to Mecca.
Encourage our audience, please pick up the book. Just like you were going to pick up Donald Trump's niece's mess. Pick up the book. It is important that we build a library from among us, for us. Increases in knowledge, or that's the name of the tune. Now that I've done that, I want to make a pivot back and go to Lamppost.
Yes.
Lamppost I know and have supported, but I want you to tell the audience about Lamppost, its vision and its mission.
Okay, well, I am a member of a board member of Lamppost Educational Initiative. That organization started by Dr. Abdullah bin Hamid Ali, who teaches Islamic law at Zaytuna College. He's grew up in Philadelphia, and then he parents. Okay. Then he went on to Morocco, where he got his the meat and potatoes of his Islamic studies background. Then also brother Khalil Mussin, also, who's from Philadelphia. They were the two founders of Lamppost Educational Initiative, which is a platform for two things. One, the platform is to try to get out scholarly information and scholarly discourse that's coming from, and some may be uncomfortable with this language, but from an indigenous perspective, indigenous Muslim perspective, number one. And then also to try to be a platform for Muslims can have discussions, even if they have differing opinions or differing views, but that there can be venues that are set up or convenes set up so that we can disagree, but at least we should be agreeable or have some sort of cordiality and be cordial in how we disagree, in which it was we're supposed to have a third one in October. It wasn't able to go forward, but for the last 2 years, there was a Black American Muslim conference. And you know something, and I have to say this because lampposts receive a lot of blowback about, there's no race in Islam, or why are you having this Black Muslim conference? And this is nationalism. But see, when the Syrians have their conference, no one said that's nationalism. Or when the Palestinians have American Muslims for Palestine, to all those, Syria is Islamic, Palestine is Islamic, Kashmir is Islamic. Mm-hmm. When we want to talk about stuff that affects Black folks and in our lineage and how we come from revert or convert backgrounds, some of the particular issues that we deal with, such as having family members who aren't Muslims, to percentages of our population being returning citizens, I mean, people who embrace Islam while they're in corrections, and how to reacclimate people in society. Well, those aren't Islamic enough for some people. That's being, as a matter of fact, we got called racist for having the Black American Muslim Conference.
I read something. I was shocked that it was, I think it was a conversation between Ali and I don't remember who the other person was. I mean, but they were on it. Oh my God, you're racist. And how are you going to have a Black anything? We, just like white folks, are not going to permit you to do that.
It's basically what it is. Basically, the attitude. That there has to be certain gatekeepers about what we can do and what we can do. But we went ahead with it, and we do have some plans. We haven't finished putting it together, but kind of like what ISNA is trying to have an online type of conference or online seminar. Well, we have a similar idea that although we cannot have the convening in Atlanta in October as we were planning due to the COVID-19 cases spiking again down in Georgia, but to at least have a few or some of these discussions in a type of online platform that at least we can debate and discuss some issues. And again, we're trying to model some differences of opinion, but at least we're starting off from our tradition. And I also have to say this too. One thing that many people don't understand about lampposts, board members on lampposts ourselves have different opinions about different things. We don't agree about everything as far as fiqh or everything relating to politics. We all don't follow the Maliki school of thought, and we have different views on certain things that relates to systemic racism and things like that. However, we do believe that we can have to provide a platform and have these discussions in the lens of our tradition and spirituality, right? And I think that that's part of what's missing in American society today. We have too much cancel culture, and some of this, unfortunately, has crept into the Muslim community, that if someone disagrees with something that I really believe in, then somehow they're like my enemy or my adversary, and I'm not supposed to like them. Well, you know what? We can disagree on something, and then we can sit down and have some tea afterwards and chuckle and still love each other. And that's how it should be.
Well, I think, what you're saying is, oh God, it's so needed. Because you're right. It took me a minute to catch up with what cancel culture meant. And then I got it. My granddaughter helped me out. I got it, and I said, oh my goodness, that's the crap people have been doing forever. You don't agree with me, you don't exist. Okay. And so now it's got a name, and I got it. But I want you to talk about the initiatives just a little bit that Lamppost tries to put out there for people to take advantage of.
Well, some of those has been a series of classes that have primarily been done and led by Ustad Abdullah Ali, who of course is the leader, and he's taught most of the classes. I believe he's going to have one about his most recent book. The title verbatim is slipping my mind right now, but it's about Black people in the Arab Muslim consciousness, which this was what he based his dissertation off of, right? So having classes about fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence about certain things that relates to creed. He just also wrote something that some people may find to be controversial, but he was articulating something about his political views and as it relates to the current political situation right now with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and basically challenging the notion that just because Trump is is uh, is vulgar and he's lewd and he has some racist ideas, that we should run and throw ourselves in the laps of the so-called white liberals and Biden. Exactly, right? Like he basically is challenging that maybe we analyze this thing and we make some calculated decisions about what we need to do, but that we shouldn't give ourselves totally over to the agenda of the progressive left just because Trump and the right have been so vitriolic, right? And I think that's something for us that that deserves at least a read and some pondering and evaluation. And I know that Ustad Abdullah, Dr. Abdullah, he doesn't mind people writing refutations, right? So if you read it and want to refute it, then by all means refute. But we should at least try to deal starting from a place of facts and not feelings. So
and don't be sheep. The shepherd flicks his whip and you all go running this way, flicks his whip the other way and you all go running that way. Be discerning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also one of the works that Lamppost has put out that Ustad Abdullah dealt with as far as translating is a return to the purity and creed, which is a good translation, and he's done some other translations. So these books can be done on can be gotten on Lampost's website. And one of the good things about these translations that are being done by of these old texts, these classic texts from American scholars and not to sound nationalistic, but African Americans in particular, is that it's translated in such a way, in a style that can be understood by Americans whose English is their first language. Because I know back in the day, I remember reading like this translation of a book of Imam Ghazali back like in the late 80s or early 90s. It was translated by somebody in India or Pakistan, but it was so awkward. I was like trying to get I was getting a headache trying to like understand like what is he actually writing, right? So now you can get some of these works or some of these things done with a clear translation with someone or people who understand, who have our idiom and understand how we process things. And that's very important.
It is critical because people have been left out. They want to improve their knowledge base, but they're not going to read South Asian English.
That's right.
To get there, and the thou and the those and the these and the whatever to get there. But I think Lamppost has, in many communities been kind of obscured, which is why I'm trying to say something about it today, because they were having something at one point, kind of a fireside chat. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Gaslight something. Do you remember? And people would come into a fixed place to have conversations.
You said a fireside chat. Is this something you're talking about recently?
Maybe 2 years ago.
Okay, I can't remember what you're talking about off the top of my head.
It was advertised, and I kept trying to push the idea. Please go get online, do something, and people were still asking me what was Lamppost.
Yeah.
So I figured that I would use a little bit of this to say what it is. You're a board member. You can certainly say what it is. This effort of Muslim Network TV will only be as strong as all of us make it. And critical talk, I'm trying to get to everybody I know and don't know to bring issues where Muslim that concern us, but also issues about which we have something to say. So, having said that, I'm going to take another minute break. This is Critical Talk, Professor Aminah Al-Deen. I know this was not in the questions that I sent you, but I'm also renowned for popping stuff up. I am so intrigued. First of all, as soon as I get off this show, I'm going and order these books and get my kids to order them because it's so very important. Um, and I think what we might do in the future, if you're willing, is to have a book talk where there are, let's just really, after we've read them, talk about them because they're important. As important as anything that the New York Times deems, however they are, deems important. So if you're willing, I'm more than happy because I'm nosy and I want to see what's in the book. But as we sit, and we're not at the end, what the media has done is it has quieted any news of protests. It has functioned on, like you were talking about earlier, an emotional turn, defund the police. Many of us, myself included, didn't know where the police got all their money from. Now we're finding out where the police get all their money from and that they have this immunity clause. And I'm saying, oh, really? In Chicago, millions of dollars are spent in on bad police cases. Giving money to families where the police have shot or torn up your house looking with the wrong address and all of this stuff. And but defund the police, I think, actually meant let us use some of the money that we put into the police for social services and mental health issues.
Yes.
But defund the police became a strategy, a get back at them strategy. We're going to leave it what it is, no matter how they try to change the narrative. We're going to keep it there because we can get people riled up, like the knuckleheads they had in South Dakota over the weekend on their motorbikes. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that, and this is like hindsight is 2020, but that language defund the police maybe didn't uh, accurately convey what many people were really saying, or
Mhm.
even abolish the police, which is even more
Mhm.
controversial language about not defunding that there are no police, but certain problematic programs of the police. And of course,
Right.
it has been used, and President Trump is using it right now in TV commercials that we see where someone picks up the phone and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, the police have been defunded, and you
Yeah.
won't have
Yeah.
anyone coming for the next 2 days,"
No.
and things like that. But there are certain things. For instance, most Americans don't know that police departments in many of our major cities are paying a foreign military
Yes.
to train the police departments on so-called riot control or crowd control,
Right.
right? So I mean that
Israel has made a fortune.
Yeah, they're making a fortune,
right?
and even the same tear gas company that supplies the Israeli military with tear gas to
Mhm.
shoot on Palestinian civilians is the same company that makes tear gas that goes to police departments that tear gas people in Portland and Minneapolis and
Right.
Ferguson in Detroit, Michigan, right? So a lot of people don't know this. Also, the issue that's a major impediment are the police unions. Like,
Yeah.
police don't need to be unionized, like how auto workers,
Right.
like no one would think that the U.S. Navy or Army would need to have a union, but our police departments now that are militarized don't don't deserve to have this sort of shield that then, even if they get in some sort of trouble, the union is there to have them keep their job, even if they have
Right.
3, 4, 5,
No
6
matter what.
complaints, yeah, of police brutality, and then they don't pay any money. The late Dick Gregory had a really good idea about this. Dick Gregory said, you know, that bad behavior, there has to be some sort of not incentivizing, but there has to be some real consequence for
Right.
these police officers who do what they do. So he said that if legislation could be tied in, that their pensions would be taken away and would be used for these wrongful claims of police brutality, that would make them act more responsible. Because even police that maybe will get let go from a police department, like for instance, Officer Coons, who's one of the officers that famously beat down Rodney King.
Right.
Well, he still was entitled to get his
Benefits.
police pension, right? So
Yeah.
so Dick Gregory had this very some say it was a radical idea. I think it was a great radical idea that
Yeah.
that there needs to be consequences. So take their pensions, and instead of the taxpayers paying twice, paying for their
Right.
salaries as well as
Right.
paying all these settlements, take it away from the funds of these of this pension. Take it away from the pension funds.
My husband did a little bit of research, and what he found out was that many police in small and large areas, urban areas, uh, and small rural areas, are working members of the KKK.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, to expect them to act any differently. I mean, like the man with his knee on George Floyd's neck was posing. People took that picture and had it blown up and put on walls in KKK lodges. I'm sure this is what you need to do. But I think also that we're at a moment that's a precipice. And I love that thing you just said about Dick Gregory. He and I went to the same high school, by the way. But that's a
Oh,
different
okay.
story. Sounds like a plan. Um, I think that one of the things that is important is we begin to lay out for all of us all of the things like we know that members of the police departments are also members of the KKK. We know that unions with giving them immunity forces citizens to pay twice. If they ever get brought up on a charge at all, and we know that for, like you said at the top of the show, nobody has been charged for Breonna Taylor. And it's going to require a whole bunch of effort. But I also know we can't afford to let this moment slip away. So, in the last few minutes, let's talk about how we can not let the moment slip away. What do we need to do? What do we
Well,
need?
I think there's something as Muslims see, there's internal work. So there's always internal and external. I believe we also have an internal game plan and external game plan.
Right.
So the internal game plan, I think that a lot of the issues that we have, uh, in our community that we need to improve upon is political education, right? It's political education. And I think that this is some of the deficit that we've had in our community as far as the history of policing in America, the history of actually how America was structured into an overt racial hierarchy and then de facto racial hierarchies, and then how these different how these hierarchies there's residue and how they can continue to play themselves out, including in policing, including in the issue of mass incarceration. I think a lot of it has to do with education. And before I get the second point, I just want to highlight this. I was on a call with a number of organizers, civil rights organizers in the Muslim community. Almost all of them Arab Americans and South Asians. And relating to the issues that we're talking about right now. And a number of them said, well, you know, we gotta change this. The system is broken. The system is broken. I heard them say system is broken about 3 or 4 times. I said, hold up a second. I said, the system's not broken. It's operating exactly the way it was designed. I said, so we have to get our language right. But that just shows a deficiency in understanding history and how this country was established. So we have to educate ourselves, because if we don't have the proper facts to move forward, we can't do the proper organizing to help unify with other people for better solutions, right?
But
so
how do we roll out this political organization? Education. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what we're doing here in Michigan, and we're actually going to have something at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. We're actually announcing it, so you're getting a sneak peek. But here at the CARE office here in Michigan, we're actually rolling out basically a semester long type course for free, where we are working with various teachers and people who are educated in sociology and history, where we are going through different aspects of the history of this country, starting with Native Americans or Indigenous Americans and ethnic cleansing, dealing with the issue of child slavery, and then how this moved into how policing evolved in the area of Reconstruction, where the overseers became the officers, literally overseer, overseer.
Yeah.
So we're going through a number of these issues, and we're going to make it available. And a lot of children will not be in school, high school students, and this can be like supplementary instruction, right? So at least here in Michigan, and it'll be online. Anyone can watch it throughout the country, but we've put together and we've talked with some people relationship to curriculum. So we're trying to have enough information that it will have some robustness and can spark people to read more. We'll have a suggested book list. At the same time, it will be at the level where someone who's at 9th grade, 10th grade reading level of cognitive skills will be able to absorb and digest most, if not all, the information. So this is what we're trying.
When are you gonna roll that out?
We're announcing it in 2 days online, and then it will start in September, inshallah.
Okay. Do me a favor. Can you keep up with me so I make sure I announce that like 100 times?
Sure thing. Sure thing.
Because people need to have it wherever they are. Yeah. Now back to the second one.
So the second one is that how we on the grassroots level, how we can see what people are doing on the grassroots relating to police accountability, community policing, legislative reform. And this is something that people should be doing in their localities. Mm-hmm. And I say this with all due respect to many people who are on the national organizing scene and suggesting people to get involved by going to national organizations. I'm actually suggesting the opposite of that people should get involved in what's going on in their locality and get to know who's doing what in their locality, right? Because local change and local shifting and policing can't work from a from a top down
Right.
type of approach. It has to work from the locality. So grassroots, not grass tops, as they say, right? So
Right. Right.
this,
Right.
this is my suggestion, which means that there has to be taking some time of actually building some relationships. And I know that's kind of difficult right now during COVID-19 pandemic, but God willing, this isn't going to last forever. But there are opportunities and localities, at least for people to get plugged um, in your locality. For instance, this is relating to a national issue, but today, um, uh, uh, ICNA here in Michigan held a forum online at 4 p.m. Eastern. They had earlier today about political education and letter writing around the Imam Jamil El Amin case, right?
Right.
So that was some local people here in Michigan works to have basically a teach-in about case for justice.
Right. Well, let me just say, this has been an eye opener. I can't thank you enough for honoring me at Critical Talk on Muslim Network TV. I will chase you down again because I got to keep up with stuff. You know, I'm sitting down here and let us get on fire Chicago. So I have to I have to keep in touch, and hopefully you will watch Muslim Network TV, put it in your network. Everybody listening, they will hear you again. And programs that Lamppost has, the initiatives that Care Michigan is doing. I want to know it all. Do you have a last word?
Well, my last word is simply may Allah bless you and may Allah reward you and may Allah preserve the Muslim TV network and the work that Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid is trying to do to help lift us up and give us a voice in the Muslim community, that we're not always dependent on other people to do for us what we should do for ourselves. Kind of like the 1990s clothing brand Fubu, for us by
Yeah,
us. We
yeah.
need we need Fubu media, right? It's
There we
media
go.
for us and by us.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, let me give my salams. Ask you to stay on. This has been Critical Talk with Professor Aminah Al-Deen. I have had as my wonderful guest Imam Dawali. Salam alaikum.